A very good morning and welcome to yet another informative edition of Media Monitor with me, Alicia Jali. Remember, you can share your views on today's discussions through Twitter, and our handle is @SA Media Monitor. Also send us your pictures and videos while participating in your 67 minutes of Mandela Day. But first, a quick look at the top stories. Yesterday, South Africans embraced the 67-minute campaign in honor of the late world icon Nelson Mandela. Madiba's legacy of caring for the less privileged was kept alive. President Jacob Zuma is expected to be discharged from hospital today after undergoing a procedure to remove gallstones over the weekend. The presidency says he was admitted yesterday. The gallstones were discovered about 2 months ago during a routine medical checkup, but the president's work program didn't allow for the procedure to be undertaken earlier, the presidency said in a statement. We wish a speedy recovery to our president. Russia, China, the US, South Korea and France are bidding for the multi-billion rand nuclear energy program. It is meant to build several plants that will generate close to 10,000 megawatts of power. Government is working with some of the country's top experts in nuclear technology to decide on a successful bidder. Well, let's now have a look at the radio news headlines. President Jacob Zuma is expected to be discharged from hospital today after undergoing a procedure to remove gallstones yesterday. Eskom has warned that it will be implementing stage 1 load shedding this morning until 10 o'clock tonight. And former FIFA Vice President Jeffrey Webb has pleaded not guilty in connection with the FIFA corruption scandal. He's accused of accepting bribes worth millions of dollars in connection with the sale of marketing rights. Well, South Africa's 2 javelin throwers posted massive personal best throws to advance to today's final at the IAAF World Youth Championships in Cali in Colombia. Let's have a look at our social media feed now. Coach Duke says, I feel so proud when I see hashtag Team SA do so well on hashtag SSA Athletics, hashtag IAAF World Youth Championships. Congrats to Werner Visser for gold. Of course, we do congratulate Mr. Visser there on that gold medal. And Anna Maria Zaluga says, hashtag IAAF World Youth Championships 2050. And those are some of the tweets we're looking at this morning. To give us analysis of today's headlines and some of the major stories of the week, let's welcome Mr. Dominique Mahlangu, the Times Media Group editor, Mr. Wellington Khadu, who is a media practitioner from Media Monitoring Africa, and of course in our Durban studios we are joined by Mr. Akash Bremdio, who's the editor of the Sunday Tribune. Akash, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Media Monitor today.
Good morning to you and to the viewers, and it's always good being on your program.
Absolutely, we love having you around. Gentlemen in studio, very good morning to both of you. We're going to have a great show today.
Morning.
Dominique?
Morning, Alicia.
Wellington?
Good morning, Alicia, and thank you for having me.
All right, gentlemen, let's go straight now into today's newspaper headlines. The City Press there has a story about the Limpopo SAPS's tactical response team deployed as private security guards to protect British American Tobacco Company. Very interesting.
Yeah.
The Sunday Times is leading with a story about recording devices that are being smuggled into SAA's high-level meetings. The Sunday Independent is leading with a story about the process saga that continues as Minister Dipuo Peters demands a comprehensive report. The Weekend Argus there has a story about a private investigator who finally identified attackers of an 18-year-old Senate Delange. The Sunday Tribune is leading with a story here, follow up, xenophobia victims yet to see justice, and also in the same paper, South Africa to copy China's way of doing business. All right, let's start with the City Press, gentlemen. Of course, tobacco giant gets police protection. This story I find to be very interesting. City Press is alleging that the service of the SAPS performed for tobacco giant BAT often, of course, entailed in the soft task of tactical response team members riding inside cigarette vans from spaza to spaza. This was made public by some members who complained to SA Police and Union. Wow, can I please get your views?
Yeah, it's very much shocking that you can have a police service, doing work for a private company that is trading in stock exchanges around the world. And it's also raising another issue of where do we draw the line in terms of police officers doing their work. And the question that arises is, are they being paid extra? And if that's the case, then are they moonlighting? And if they are moonlighting, is it a government policy now that police can moonlight?
What do you think, Wellington?
No, look, unlike Dom's here, I think it's not surprising because we know that the relationship that private companies and political power has is something that needs to be decoded. And for me, it's not really surprising. The issue is it's actually coming out now, and it's great that it's coming out and the debate is being put on the table.
Very interesting when we're going to look at Ria Pierre and her woes as well as the SAPS's woes. Akash, what do you make of this story, man?
Look, it's not surprising. I'm thinking to the whole Gupta Gate incident where members of the South African police provided a blue light escort to members of the Gupta family that were attending that wedding in Sun City, and a couple of weeks later we were told that in fact they were doing it in their own private time. So there's obviously a link between police doing their official duties versus as Dominic was talking about, police doing some work on a part-time basis. I guess what we need to establish here is exactly what it was. If they were doing it while in uniform, while on official duty, well, then that's problematic because there needs to be a clear distinction between, proper state policing work versus private work.
All right, let's leave it there, gentlemen, and move on, of course, to page 2 now of the City Press. And it says there, Pierre to feel IPID's wrath still on police. And that is, of course, 10 months after Nathi Nhleko was instructed to take disciplinary action against Pierre for her alleged involvement when she apparently alerted Anulamu that he was the subject of a Hawks investigation. But apparently Nhleko's office is not saying why such steps have not been taken. Look, Rhea is in hot water, but just how hot? Do we know?
No, I think, and I've said it in this platform before, that the sooner she goes, the better for this country. You cannot have a commissioner of police, being caught up in such headlines. I mean, we cannot every day complain about police and police management. And I think that IPID should go ahead and insist through the NPA that action needs to be taken. I mean, now we've got the Marikana report, which was also damning on her part in terms of how she handled that operation. So, in my view, the sooner she goes, the better.
Look, I'm grateful that at least media now has a long-term memory because they are bringing this to the fore. Because this story appeared a while back and we had almost forgotten about it, and it's great that it's coming back. But I think what needs to happen, or what needs to be teased out more, is how the SAPS Act actually works and how it functions, and also the NPA Act, because those things are not coming out in this story. We are left wondering, okay, yes, the Ria Pierre essentially informed one of the commissioners about an impending investigation. To me, it's like, whoa, how does that work? And I'm sure for ordinary citizens it's the same thing. So how do these acts work, and what is she required to do as a commissioner, and what is she not required to do? And so is the NPA. How do they proceed with their investigations? Those things need to be teased out, aside from just following up on a story. But it's great that it's now back.
All right, and we're looking there. There's actually a story on page 4 of the Sunday Independent. It says, crooked police officers who dodged the bullet. I wish we could get into that story, but let's first talk about the Sunday Times on page 10, gentlemen. Basically, drama is unfolding at the SAA offices. Sunday Times is alleging that certain employees are even taking recording devices to high-level meetings amid the infighting and squabbles between Nico Bezuidenhout and, of course, the chairperson, Dudu Myeni. Apparently, the rumor is that Bezuidenhout is going to be shipped back to Mango. Akash, let's hear your views on this one first.
Look, the really sad part of a lot of the problems that are happening in state-owned entities in South Africa, and I'm thinking even here about COSATU, is a lot of this is coming down to clashes between different personalities. And really what we should be looking at here is what's good practice for the business, what's being done to further the interests of this particular entities. We know that SAA got a bailout. We know that they're in financial problems. Surely the focus of the different personalities that are involved in this particular squabble should be about what's in the best interests of SAA. Instead, we find that there's a whole lot of boardroom politics that's at play here. And certainly, as long as that remains the focus, we're not going to see these entities advancing from a business point of view.
All right, gentlemen, very quickly, Dom.
No, for me, it's again wrong headlines in terms of our public institutions, from SAA to PRASA last week, and others. So it raises a question that is it a question of doing the job that people are hired to do, or are they simply bringing politics? And
the big question is always, it seems like it's the people's personalities that are coming out to play. But let's move on and leave it there, gentlemen. We could go on and on. I want us to have a look at page 10 now, still on the Sunday Times. It says, Vavi's bid for new union hits a snag. Well, basically, a new trade union federation looks set to be established by the end of this year, gentlemen. This following, of course, the defeat of the Vavi and NUMSA issue at the recent COSATU Congress. Never-ending drama in COSATU NUMSA Vavi saga, leading us to the next paper with a similar story. But I want to get your views first.
Okay, so this is what I think about COSATU. It deserves a miracle. It actually needs a miracle for it. No, seriously, for those who believe in miracles, then it's great. It can come back to its footing.
Such little hope,
right,
Wellington?
But for those who don't believe in miracles, then obviously it won't happen. But I think we have gone to a point where there is no turning back. Like we were talking about individual personalities. If you look at the coverage, it's about either Dlamini or Vavi, right? And the unions that support him, personalities, and not necessarily like people on the ground and what they feel, which is quite sad.
No, for me it's a sad case. I mean, in 2015, for COSATU to find itself in this position when they are supposed to be dealing with workers' issues. And now you find individuals, who now think that they are bigger than the organization itself. I mean, in this case, I will push the blame in both Mr. Dlamini and Mr. Vavi and their cheerleaders. I mean, no one is really dealing with the shop floor issues. No one is dealing with the serious issue that is facing workers here, which is retrenchments. And they are not talking about retrenchments. And in this country today, not only do we need to create jobs, but we need to protect jobs that have been created. And what do we get from the biggest union in this country? Individuals fighting for positions, individuals protecting factional battles that are outside the organization, that you can find within the ANC and within the SACP. So I think both leaders, I mean, no one is a winner in this instance. They can come and claim that the Special National Congress was smooth, certain people were defeated, but at the end of the day, workers were defeated in this country.
All this in light of, during the wage negotiations, of course, in the gold sector. Very worrying indeed. But let's have a look now, of course, at the Sunday Independence. The front page there, the headline reads, Minister wants Montana report. Now, basically, Transport Minister Deborah Peters says, according to the Independent, demanded a comprehensive report from PRASA's board, what led to the dismissal of Lucky Montana early this week. Very controversial axing of Montana. What do you think is the real story here, Cash?
What I really think the minister is saying by asking for this report is she's not dealing with the issue. She's kicking it for touch. I mean, it's very simple. Ask for a report. The report will take a couple of weeks, couple of months maybe to get drawn up. At the end, we know Montana's gone. The probability of him coming back, given the personal squabbles between him and the chair of the board, it's pretty unlikely. But, at least the minister can go back and say, look, I did something. I asked for a report.
I think you put it nicely. The minister is simply window dressing. It's just ticking the boxes. this is what I've done, this is what I've done, and no one can blame me. But the question remains, this whole fight between Mr. Lucky Montana and the board, what led to this disaster that they decided to tell him that you're no longer going to serve the full term. You can actually pack your things in less than an hour. But the shocking thing is that whilst we were dealing with the whole problems about the new locomotives that have been brought into the country, now this whole matter is clouded by the very same person who was trying to tell the nation that, look, we've gone through the process, I think the trains are correct, but in the midst of that, we're caught up now in the very same man being pushed out. And so where does the truth lie here?
Where does the truth lie?
And again, who is the biggest loser on this one? Taxpayers. That's essentially what it boils down to.
All right, gentlemen, let's have a look now at page 16 of the Sunday Independent, and it reads there, prisons. This is a very interesting story. Prisons should arm inmates for life outside. Well, new Correctional Services Commissioner Zach Modise is on a mission to transform South Africa's 243 prisons into, wait for it, centers of excellency, and is determined to fight gangsterism in prisons there. Great stuff here. Would it culminate into real action, do you think?
No, for me it's just nice words, and we live in hope. We hope that he will be the first man in this country. I mean, also maybe the first man in this world who's going to stop gangsterism in prison. But I'm not taking away his optimism. Let's give him a chance and let's see. But the biggest problem facing South Africans, especially with how our prisons are managed, is that people go in there and when they come out, there's nothing for them. And even companies are reluctant to hire someone who comes from a prison. So even if you skill them to come out and do what? That's where we need to start there, to say that those who are going to be skilled, there's an opportunity for them to continue, being good citizens of this country. Rather than you skill them and then they come out, they get frustrated, and then they go back to
the
prison.
crime ways.
Yeah.
Wellington.
It boils down to the whole justice system. So it's not just about people who are in prison, but how they get into prison and what actually happens when they are in prison. Think about women and children in prison and the conditions under which they live in. Those things need to be dealt with. And I think the whole essence of correctional services is to rehabilitate, right? And integrate people back into society. But given the conditions that our prisons are in, like you're saying, it becomes very, very difficult to even envisage a situation where life will be better outside of prison when someone comes back. So
they shouldn't be sending tweets and creating Facebook pages while they're in prison.
And in fact, there's a story that
very quickly,
my newspaper ran a week ago, that now the biggest currency in prison is no longer your cigarettes and other things, it's airtime. And with airtime, that's where they make deals. So again, the Minister of Correctional Services did say that he's going to put these jamming devices in prisons. And the question is, why was this delay? Because they know where the problem is.
It's been happening for some time. All right, Akash, I want you to tell us a bit about your front page today. Please tell us a bit about that follow-up on the xenophobia.
Well, it's been 4 months since the violence that was mainly concentrated in Durban broke out, and we did a story just checking up exactly what's happened to those people who were arrested. And we found that, in fact, other than the initial court appearance, there's nothing further that has been done. There's been no indictments that have been drawn up. No one has pleaded. No one has stood trial. No one has been prosecuted. And one could argue, but it's only 4 months after the fact, and justice takes a long time in South Africa. But the reality of the situation is that this was a very, very serious problem that hurt the image of South Africa. Most importantly, between 6 to 8 people died. And 4 months down the line, very, very little has been done to bring the perpetrators to book. And we've got to ask ourselves the question, if we don't show that there are consequences to actions like xenophobia, all that we are doing is laying the ground for it to happen all over again.
Why aren't the other newspapers doing a follow-up on this story, Doms? Why aren't you?
I think I will commend the editor and the staff for taking us back to actually open the door to say that whilst we had the government and we've got the president issuing strong statements that action will be taken, 4 months later nothing has happened. And it actually takes us back a during the first wave of xenophobic violence, where, again, were promised all sorts of things, that the action will be taken, people will be prosecuted. And what did we end up with? Cases being thrown out of court. And now, also on this matter, 4 months ago, there was even Operation Fiela, where people were raising questions that, why are you simply using strong tactics to deal with a matter that will need everyone involved, everyone within a table to discuss this matter? I'm not surprised that 4 months later we don't even have one prosecution. And I can tell you that 12 months later we'll still be told that there's a report gathering dust somewhere in Parliament on this matter.
Let's leave that issue to gather dust there, Dominique. We're going to take a quick ad break, and when we return, we discuss some of the stories of the week. SATU calls for the reinstatement of Jackie Poko, the former lover of AXCO SATU General Secretary. You don't want to miss that. This is Media Monitor.
Require, want the franchise on the basis of one man, one vote. They want political independence. We have made it very clear in our policy that South Africa is a country of many races. There is room for all the various races. I have fought very firmly against white domination. I have fought very firmly against black domination. I cherish the ideal of a new South Africa. The idea of a democratic and free society. It is an idea for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But my Lord, if it needs be, it is an idea for which I am prepared to die. I speak as a man who has spent not a few months in jail. There is nothing which reveals much more the cruelty of a police of a country than what happens behind prison walls.
You're watching Media Monitor. If you've just joined us, our media experts today are Mr. Dominique Mahlangu, Wellington Radu and Akash Bramdio in our Durban studios. Let's move on to stories of the week now. The Advertising Standards Authority has once again ordered the removal of misleading adverts about new e-toll discounts and tariffs by Sanral. In yet another e-toll saga, municipalities have outstanding e-toll bills amounting to millions of rands. Opposition parties will tackle this issue when Parliament resumes. Look, why did the ASA allow the advert to go on air without proper scrutinization?
I mean, it raises questions of management in that office. I mean, Sanral has been under pressure from day one, especially when this whole thing of e-tolls in Gauteng surfaced. And I'm not surprised that some of the things are done in haste to try and convince the public that, look, we've turned the corner. I mean, that advert is clear. I mean, if you listen to it, it tells you that now you are going to benefit from, if you're going to pay and all of that. Yet, if you go to their offices, I mean, the infrastructure is not there that allows you to pay what you're supposed to pay. And for me, why flight the advert even before you can have your systems, in order? But
all the municipalities owe Sanral money, so they can't get the systems up and running, Dom.
It's a very lame excuse. I mean, if they are going to say that they've got to go on this so-called media campaign to try and convince general public to pay, do things properly. And I'm not surprised now that municipalities are not paying. I mean, people were celebrating when the story broke to say that why force us to pay when the very same people that are supposed to lead by example are the ones ignoring Sanral. So where do you draw the line in terms of, do we allow citizens to continue paying, or you allow municipalities run by politicians not to pay.
Akash?
You know, all I have to say on this is I'm very grateful that when I drive up to Johannesburg, which is not very often, unlike your two guests there, you know, I get a certain number of free uses of the e-tolls. So as a person from KwaZulu-Natal, I'm really grateful. But look, here's the thrust of it. You know, Sanral's got enough to deal with. They should be getting the basics right.
Wellington?
I don't think they should be getting the messages right, actually.
What should they be doing?
No, seriously, for them, they have been receiving so much coverage for the wrong reasons, right? For a long period. Why then put out an advert that's misleading? That's one thing. I shouldn't be surprised because they haven't been honest right from the beginning. So why do we expect them to be honest now? Think about it. They haven't. We don't know how much money is going to the company that put all the countries, right? We also don't know how much money is going to servicing the debt and also the road infrastructure. They're not coming out on those issues. So why should we expect them to actually tell us something
in an advert?
In an advert. That's just my sense.
You guys have such little faith in everything. But let's move on now. With the wage negotiation season fully underway, the Communication Workers Union has reached an agreement with local cell phone operator MTN. It's announced striking members will return to work tomorrow. Now, this follows 8 weeks of industrial action, which was centered on a bonus dispute. MTN and the union have agreed on an 8% annual bonus for 2015 and a guaranteed 12% bonus regardless of company performance. Gentlemen, are the demands presented by unions during the wage season reasonable? Let's start with you in Durban, Akash.
Look, I think in this particular instance, MTN workers, in fact, got a pretty raw deal because some of them went on, didn't go to work, they were on strike, and they're not going to get paid for this period. And if I remember correctly, it was something like a 6 to an 8 week period where they're not going to get the increases that they wanted. And I was reading an analysis piece that even with the bonus that they're now going to get, there's no way that they're going to make up the money that was lost. That's the first point. The second point is that it's now probably going to result in job losses because, in fact, it already has in certain units at MTN. And I think given the economic environment that we're in, I think it's very important that union leaders very carefully consider the demands that are being made. I mean, we're looking at inflation of just under about 6%, but the economy is not growing. So many of the businesses are in fact struggling to pay people these over then above inflation wages that are being demanded. But I think in this particular case, I really think MTN workers got a pretty bad deal.
Gentlemen.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's well and good that you've got unions representing workers, but the story that South Africans need to be told of, it's what happens after the deal has been signed. I mean, I do agree with the comments that there will be a lot of job losses after this. But those are the stories that normally don't get a wider coverage, or that we write about and also report in our TV and radio. Yeah. So special congresses and who's leading the march and all of that. We're not dealing now with the issue of once the deal has been signed and people have been given bonuses, above inflation. How many people are going to be lost along the way? And now we're in a country where unions are in a contest of some sort. I mean, the higher demands you put on the table in order to please the public that out there, that you can actually force management, to agree to those percentages. I mean, all the unions, they give crazy demands on the table, 18%, 16%, and then you ask yourself, which company in this country can afford to give workers even 22%. If there's that company, give me that address, maybe I will apply. Because of,
we're all going up now. All right, we'll wrap it there. You got a comment on the next one, Wellington. I want us to have a look now. It's a small leap towards freedom of speech and justice on the continent. Well, that's how Media Fraternity describes the release of journalists and media practitioners from prison this week. 5 Ethiopian journalists, a Zambian newspaper journalist and editor, as well as a Gambian radio journalist were released from prison. Journalists in many parts of the world constantly face unfair imprisonment and assassination in some instances. Now, this this is not only the violation of their human rights, but also a hurdle in their obligation of reporting accurately.
Look, what I wanted to say earlier before I comment on this one is that a lot of the stories that we're going to see is about unreasonable demands from workers, and that was a very good question to ask. Are these reasonable? Because in order to answer that question, I think media has to at least go back in time, because a lot of the deals that unions make with companies are 3-year deals, yes, right? And it would be better for media, when articulating these things, on trying to understand where the workers are coming from, unpack all the deals. And nowadays it's pretty an easy job to do with technology.
Transparency,
you could do that, So I'm hoping that we're going to get there. But this is a very important story, actually, because I think the South African government really needs to come out now and condemn such things, of imprisoning journalists outrightly, especially given that we are hearing comments about a media appeals tribunal that might be coming back. The debate is coming back on the table, and a lot of people in the political sphere are commenting about the relationship between government and particularly print media. So it is such a crucial time that we need to be talking about these things and putting them out, especially from the government's perspective, saying we condemn this, because media freedom essentially is not about journalists. It's not about media. It's about people's right to know. And that's what's important.
Very quickly, Dom.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I will actually agree with my brother here that it actually takes the debate. Whilst we celebrate journalists being freed from those prisons, and then the question is, why were they, taken to prison? And bringing it back home, I think our politicians and our leaders should understand that the struggle for information and the struggle for the truth, people died for that right. And you cannot have now politicians simply saying that, no, we need a media tribunal. My question as a practicing journalist is that, if I write a story, must I now fear being jailed? Must I now fear getting that knock in my house to say that, Mr. Mahlangu, we don't agree with that headline, so you are going to serve 6 months in prison? It cannot be. I mean, our former president, Nelson Mandela, did not fight for such a situation where we are going to threaten people to say that the so-called critical media. What is critical media?
All right, let's leave it there, Dominic. Once again, it's personalities.
Alicia, I wonder whether I could quickly come in at this point.
All right, let's now move on to another story. In an effort to send a strong message to teachers who practice corporal punishment in schools, a teacher from a Gordon primary school in Alexandra was sentenced to 1 year in prison for hitting a pupil with a hosepipe. In another incident, a Baragwanath doctor could face criminal charges after allegedly assaulting a mentally challenged teenager. The patient's father later charged for hospital assault. What's going on here, Akash? Such cruelty.
Look, in the case of the teacher, I'm not at all surprised, because this particular teacher, in fact, she hit the kid to the extent that it's now doubtful whether the child will ever be able to fully use, the hand again. I mean, that's unacceptable. When I was growing up and when I was at school, corporal punishment was allowed. I mean, I remember being caned and stuff like that. But I mean, assault of this nature, I mean, this is not just, this is grievous bodily assault. I think it's only right and proper that this particular teacher be dealt with in the most severe way possible.
All right, very quickly, Dom.
I think, I mean, now and again, when I meet my friends that I was with in high school, we'll even joke and say, I hope one day we'll force government to bring in TRC that will focus mainly on what used to happen to us in school. Because when I read the story, I simply said, not only should they throw away the key, they should actually send a strong message to teachers out there that they should deal with their private anger issues and not take, all their frustrations, on pupils, because it's uncalled for.
All right, very quickly.
But in order to address the underlying issues, I think it goes beyond just sending a message. It goes, I think, into actually identifying the problems within the schooling system and dealing with them so that at least we get something sensible out of it. Because obviously these incidents will be there. You will have incidents like that. The thing is, how do you deal with them, and what sort of measures are you putting in place to ensure that such things don't happen again?
All right, we're going to leave it there because it is time for another quick ad break. And when we return, we're going to unpack the story of the 10 detained South Africans in China who are headed home. Do stay tuned for this and more. This is Media Monitor. Do stay with us.
I came out with mixed feelings. There was the joy and excitement of meeting my beloved wife. I also would have the opportunity of helping my children and grandchildren grow. I had the opportunity of meeting my comrades who had kept the fires alive during these 27 years. It was when I came out, however, that I felt the full impact of the challenge that faced my comrades and I.
We were turning a new page in the history of South Africa. This was in my mind as I cast that ballot paper. The day when it was announced that we had won the election by 62% was an unforgettable day.
Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela do hereby swear to be faithful to the Republic of South Africa and to devote myself to the well-being of the Republic and all its people.
Will you please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God"?
So help me God.
Welcome back. Let's now have a look at the stories of the week. That was the first group of 5 South Africans detained in China has arrived back home, while the remaining 5 are expected to be home tomorrow. The tourists were arrested in Inner Mongolia a week ago and accused of watching video material of banned organizations in their hotel rooms. President Jacob Zuma has applauded South Africa in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Now this follows the UN AIDS report highlighting South Africa's strides in combating the disease. Now according to this report, the world has met and exceeded the AIDS targets set in the Millennium Development Goal 6 and is quite on track to end the AIDS epidemic by 2030 as part of the Sustainable Development Goals. Well, because we are Africa's news leader and we're broadcasting across the whole African continent, let's have an update on the continental and global news of the week. Kenya's Westgate Shopping Mall reopened for business on Saturday, nearly 2 years after militants laid siege and killed at least 67 shoppers and staff in 4 days of bloodshed. To strengthen security at the shopping complex, metal detectors have been installed at the main entrance. Fear looms over Burundi, sliding back into violent turmoil within the country as elections are set to proceed for the 21st of July. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni left crisis talks between Burundi's rival political factions without a deal. Well, coming up straight after this quick ad break, we're going to look at how Nelson Mandela impacted on ordinary citizens, and the globe will be back with a wrap of the show. Don't miss it. This is Media Monitor.
Let us now work together, proud of the fact that we have liberated not only coloreds, Indians, and Africans. We have liberated whites as well. Although the world has made much progress in the 20th century, the lives of much of humanity is still blighted by poverty, violence, hunger, disease, and environmental damage. Why is it that over 200 million children under the age of 5 are malnourished in this day and age? Why do millions of people still not have electricity and clean water when the nations of the world can produce so much wealth? Why are people still dying from diseases that modern science can cure? All this can be changed if ordinary people like you and me act together.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. Now, yesterday, the world expressed love in many ways through acts of kindness. International Madiba Day serves a remembrance of the virtues that distinguished Nelson Mandela from other world leaders. Madiba earned international reputation as a struggle icon, a symbol of unity and exemplary peacemaker. Let's hear what the New York first black mayor had to say about Madiba.
He believed deeply that you could use love to counter hate, and he did. I mean, who among us could be as, not necessarily forgiving, but let's say understanding as Nelson Mandela?
Akash, let's first talk about the international significance of Mandela Day. What does it mean to you?
Look, I think it's really amazing that we have a leader that we can call a South African who has the stature that Nelson Mandela does. In fact, I think it's almost, we're almost blessed that we can say that I lived in the time of Nelson Mandela. And I think, you know, a day like yesterday where people do good for other people is something that brings out the goodness in all South Africans. And I really think Nelson Mandela set the bar for us. He set the standard about how we should interact with people. It's a pity that there are not many people in our country, or there seem to be so many in positions of power who don't follow his example. But I mean, for me personally, you know, I mean, Mandela will always be a father, the most highly respected person from my perspective, and someone that I always will look up to, and someone that has said so many wise things that you can constantly learn from.
Look, you were just saying that, you know, a lot of people use that day as a selfie moment and so forth, but what do you make of the views that the day is just a PR day?
That's the thing. I mean, the whole legacy of our former leader has been commercialized to such an extent that, as I was saying, that it becomes a selfie day. People take pictures to feel good for that moment. But the critical question that we're discussing here is that how do we extend the legacy? How do we make the legacy to come alive and also to last for the next and the next generation? And I think as South Africans, we should go back to the drawing board and look at how our president, former president, gave us hope and gave us a dream. I mean, no leader today can give us that, because if he gave us a dream that we can become a better nation, he gave us hope that we can face tomorrow, you know, armed with that faith that things are going to get better. And that's the thing, that as South Africans every day should not be just 67 minutes in a year. It should be 7 minutes, in my view, every day. Do good to fellow South Africans and make sure that you take this country forward.
All right. right, okay, gentlemen, it is time for us to wrap our discussion. I want to find out from you, Akash, what stories do you think will be dominating the media this coming week?
I think we need to have a look at the upcoming Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the Reserve Bank and look at the possibility of whether interest rates are going to go up or not. We've been fairly fortunate in South Africa in that interest rates have remained pretty stable and haven't been increased or decreased for a number of months now. But it's very possible that the interest rate hikes could start, if not in the coming weeks, but certainly in the coming months. So I think the upcoming meeting is something that we should be watching very, very carefully because it will impact on our personal finances as well as the finances of our country.
Thank you, Akash. Dominique?
No, I think for me, the whole saga within PRASA is still going to dominate headline news. We'll want to see whether the minister, in terms of her asking for a full report, does she want a report and what is she going to do with the report? So I think that story is still going to clog our headlines. And also, you know, the whole issue around COSATU, or whether Mr. Vavi and his cheerleaders within NUMSA and all of that, are they going to start their own union? Or are they still going to try and fight it in the next elective conference of the
Well,
of
apparently
COSATU?
their bid to actually get back to NUMSA is one that is over. But we'll definitely keep our eyes peeled for that one. Wells, what do you think will be coming up in news this week?
I completely agree with Doms, but I think what would be useful for me is getting to hear these stories about PRASA from a taxpayer's perspective or agenda, as well as the COSATU issue from the workers' perspective. That would be really, really cool if media could focus on that, aside from the personalities like we had said earlier.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us today. Akash in Durban, thank you so much for joining us today. Dominique Mahlangu, and of course, Mr. Wellington Radu, my guest today. And thank you to all our viewers for joining us today. Please always remember that your contributions and suggestions are highly valued. You can get in touch with us on email for any suggestions, and our address is mediamonitor@sabc.co.za. We're also available on Facebook. Do find us on www.facebook.com/Media Monitor and tick like next to our page. You can very well find us on Twitter as well @SA Media Monitor. Well, 2 a.m. is our repeat broadcast. But if you can't wait, www.youtube.com/SABC News is where you'll find us on YouTube. We've got you covered across all media platforms. I don't know what it is that you need. And for all our online updates, our website is www.sabc.co.za/news to get more info on the stories on our info boards today. But before we go, here's something we're going to leave you with. The SABC Foundation heeded the call to give back for 67 minutes in celebration of Mandela Day this year. We close off with various activities that were carried out by the foundation nationwide. For myself, Alicia Jadi, and the Cutive team, and our guest today, you have yourself a blessed Sunday. Goodbye.
Tandogazi Junior Secondary in Qunu, Mandela's birthplace, received a facelift courtesy of the SABC Foundation. A school once in ruins returned to its former glory. International and local artists entertained residents from Qunu and surrounding areas in honor of the former statesman. Activities in Durban include the Million Meal Challenge campaign, giving meals to reach more than 130,000 children. In Mpumalanga, senior citizens were treated to an African culinary feast and more blankets to stave off the cold. In Limpopo, a new house was given to a family of 6 who shared 2 mud houses for years. MLFM has so far facilitated the construction of 16 houses in the province. And in Johannesburg, hearts and bodies were warmed with blankets and food. The SABC will pay tribute to Madiba throughout July.
All our radio stations, our 19 radio stations, have got events all over the country. There are others in Qunu, there are other people who are in Durban and everywhere else. And it's happening up to the end of the month, where we are giving houses to the needy people, we are giving blankets, we are giving food, we are celebrating.
require, want the franchise on the basis of one man, one vote. They want political independence. We have made it very clear in our policy that South Africa is a country of many races. There is room for all the various races.
I have fought very firmly against white domination. I have fought very firmly against black domination. I cherish the ideal of a new South Africa.
The idea of a democratic and free society. It is an idea for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But my Lord, if it needs be, it is an idea for which I am prepared to die.
I speak as a man who has spent not a few months in jail. There is nothing which reveals much more the cruelty of a police of a country than what happens behind prison walls.